Tonight, as America's biggest bank gets ready to start seizing homes again, the Obama administration vows to crack down on any lender violating foreclosure rules. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, reopening an old wound. A surprise phone call from the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to his old nemesis, Anita Hill, is not well received. 6 months after the BP spill, many have already forgotten, but they can't. And for victims of gay bullying, a message from people who have been there.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. After a moratorium on foreclosures, Bank of America and GMAC are about to begin repossessing homes again in a year that has already seen a record number of foreclosures, more than 800,000 so far. B of A insists that despite paperwork errors, no one lost a home wrongfully. But an investigation by 50 state attorneys general is just getting underway. The Obama administration warned lenders today they'll be held accountable for any violations of the law. And New York became the first state to require lawyers representing banks in foreclosures to sign a form verifying all the paperwork is accurate. All this, Bill Whitaker reports, against a backdrop of a growing backlash against the banks.
Around Chicago, where foreclosures have mushroomed in 2 years, the county sheriff today refused to act on banks' orders to put 1,500 homeowners out of their homes. Reviewing almost 400 foreclosures, he found only 17 with proper paperwork.
Before I am asked to put more families out in the streets, I am going to require the banks to tell me one basic thing, that it is all legal.
In Newport Beach, California, Rene Zepeda was arrested trying to break back into his house after the bank evicted his family. He's still fighting the bank.
I feel like it still is my house because it's my house.
Across the country, the foreclosure mess is sparking a consumer backlash.
The illegal procedures must be stopped today.
Not only was paperwork unreliable, but homeowner's attorney Dustin Zacks says mortgages were bundled, sold, and resold so many times during the housing bubble, not even the banks know who owns millions of mortgages. He says it's too soon to lift the foreclosure suspension.
Again, it's surprising that a bank would think that in 2 weeks they can review all the ownership documents and all the proprietary information to prove that they own these loans in just a couple weeks.
Now bank investors are crying foul too. A growing number who bought mortgage-backed securities is complaining the securities were full of bad loans to homeowners who couldn't afford them, made by bankers who should have known better. Investors holding $50 billion of securities told Bank of America this week they intend to get their money back.
What the investor is saying is, look, I bought this loan from you in good faith, but you cheated me.
Now a slew of federal agencies are investigating the crisis. The FBI is checking whether banks' actions were criminal. That's why federal officials involved with housing met at the White House today.
There are law enforcement agencies that are involved, but they are looking at allegations of fraud, and that is part of the review, but that's only one part of it.
And analysts say this crisis probably won't peak until sometime next year, which means this foreclosure mess is likely to get messier still. Katie?
Bill Whitaker. Bill, thanks very much. It was the mortgage meltdown that touched off the worldwide economic crisis, and many countries are still struggling to recover. Today, Britain's new conservative government outlined the sharpest cuts in public spending in 6 decades, the equivalent of $135 billion over the next 5 years. Experts on both sides of the Atlantic will be watching carefully to see if that kind of severe belt tightening can cure an ailing economy. From London, here's Mark Phillips.
It's a high-stakes roll of the economic dice, involving massive spending cuts and huge job losses. Necessary cuts, the government says.
And we've taken our country back from the brink of bankruptcy.
A brink approached because of Britain's huge public deficit, more than 12% of its total economy, compared to a U.S. deficit of about 9.5%. The cuts. Britain's Home Office, which oversees police and prisons, will see its budget slashed 24%. Education down 3%. Transport down 15%. Defense down 8%. A cut so serious, 42,000 soldiers and civilians, that Prime Minister David Cameron called President Obama to assure him Britain could continue its war effort in Afghanistan. The projected government job losses, 490,000, about 1 in 10 government workers. The British government is gambling that as the economy improves, private business will grow to make up for the government job losses. But critics say it's a risky bet, and that the cuts could force a second recessionary dip, and that the British pound may start to look like this.
The deepest cuts to public spending in living memory.
Britain has now become a test case as to whether cutting a country's deficit fixes its economy or makes it worse. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
In other news, anyone who sat through the confirmation hearings for Clarence Thomas back in 1991 will remember it was one of the stranger episodes in American history. Now, all these years later, what some would call an equally strange sequel. A phone call from Justice Thomas's wife to the woman who accused him at those hearings of sexual harassment, Anita Hill. Here's Chief Legal Correspondent Jan Crawford.
Anita Hill was back in the spotlight today, surrounded by reporters asking if she would apologize to Clarence Thomas and his wife.
I need for you to get out of the street. I don't have any comment right now.
19 years ago, Anita Hill first stepped into the media spotlight when she accused Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas, her former boss, of sexual harassment.
He would turn the conversation to a discussion of sexual matters.
Hill's sensational charges captivated the country and nearly derailed his nomination to the Supreme Court. Thomas flatly denied the allegations.
It is a high-tech lynching.
The Senate went on to confirm him, but the scars remained. Proving that time does not heal all wounds, last week Mrs. Thomas called Anita Hill, now a professor at Brandeis University, to ask for an apology. Mrs. Thomas said in a voicemail, "I would love you to consider an apology sometime and some full explanation of why you did what you did to my husband." In an interview 3 years ago, Ginny Thomas told me of similar wishes.
I think she owes us an apology, and I look forward to receiving that phone call or that visit one day.
But since that interview, Ginny Thomas, once the silent spouse, has come under scrutiny. She formed a grassroots conservative group and speaks at Tea Party conventions. Her call to Anita Hill came the same morning the New York Times published a story questioning her political activities as the wife of a Supreme Court justice.
Now, a week after she got that call, Hill contacted local police and asked them to alert the FBI. She said yesterday in a statement that she thought the call was inappropriate and that she was not going to apologize because she had nothing to apologize for. Katie?
Jan Crawford. Jan, thank you. Now to the battle over the fate of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the law that prevented gays from serving openly in the military. Today, the Obama administration asked a federal appeals court for permission to resume enforcing the law, at least for now. The president does want the law repealed, but he wants it done gradually. And according to a CBS poll, most Americans have no problem with gays serving openly. As David Martin reports, these are confusing times for military recruiters and those who want to serve.
Recruiting stations suddenly became ground zero in the battle over gays in uniform. As like it or not, they began processing applications from gay recruits. But gay advocate Aaron Belkin warns it won't last long. The Don't Ask, Don't Tell law, which bars gays from serving openly, will be back.
For any gay or lesbian person who decides to enlist in the military right now, there's a likelihood that Don't Ask, Don't Tell will be reinstated, and that probably means that the individual would not be able to enlist.
Obama administration lawyers asked an appeals court to suspend the ruling that declared Don't Ask, Don't Tell unconstitutional, saying it would cause significant immediate harm to the military. For gays like this Air Force officer who calls himself J.D. Smith, it's still not safe to come out.
I think what needs to happen is someone like Secretary Gates or high-level leadership has to say that it's okay to come out now.
Former Army Lieutenant Dan Choi, who was discharged for being gay, applied to rejoin the Army.
I talked about being gay. I said I'm gay, and I was kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and they said it's very good to have you, and it's wonderful that you're here, and they were absolutely professional.
Except Choi has an arrest record for chaining himself to the White House fence to protest Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and would need a waiver. Enlisting is a process that can take days, weeks, even months to complete the physical and mental exams before recruits actually take the oath, as they did at this public swearing-in at a rodeo.
Late today, an appeals court suspended the ruling that declared Don't Ask, Don't Tell unconstitutional. So once again, it is illegal for gays to serve openly in uniform. Katie?
David Martin reporting from the Pentagon tonight. Thank you. Now turning to campaign 2010. For his first 2 years in the White House, President Obama has had the advantage of a House and Senate controlled by his own party. But with that now in jeopardy, the president hit the campaign trail in an effort to save as many Democratic seats as possible. 5 states in 4 days, beginning tonight in Oregon and ending Saturday in Minnesota. Control of Congress will be decided by dozens of House and Senate races we've identified as critical contests. In the House, Republicans need to pick up 39 seats now held by Democrats to reach the 218 it takes to become the majority. And they have a good shot at that. They're favored or have an even shot at winning at least that many Democratic seats. Meanwhile, in the Senate, the Republicans would need a net gain of 10 seats to reach the magic number of 51, and they're targeting 12 Democratic seats that are currently in jeopardy. 3 are in states where Hispanics will be a key factor: California, Colorado, and Nevada. 2 years ago, Hispanics helped President Obama win all 3 of those states. John Blackstone reports now on the growing political clout of Latinos.
With a mariachi band and a tequila toast, an Hispanic business group welcomed California's 2 top Republican candidates, Meg Whitman for governor and Carly Fiorina for the U.S. Senate.
I think every speech should begin with a shot of tequila.
For Fiorina, trying to unseat Senator Barbara Boxer, attracting the Latino vote is crucial. It's equally important for Meg Whitman in her race against Democrat Jerry Brown for governor.
I cannot win this election without the Latino vote.
Latinos make up this country's biggest and fastest growing minority, numbering more than 48 million. Some 19 million are eligible to vote.
Whether it's in California, whether it's in Nevada and other states, Latinos are looking for a reason to come out and vote.
In 9 states, Latino voters make up more than 10% of the electorate. They favor Democrats over Republicans 62 to 25%. President Obama is urging them to get out and vote.
Don't forget who your friends are. No se olviden.
But in Nevada, Latinos were urged not to vote in a controversial ad now pulled from TV stations.
Don't vote.
The ad, created by a conservative Latino group, seemed designed to help Republican Senate candidate Sharon Engel in her close race with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
Illegals sneaking across our border.
In ads promising to get tough on illegal immigration, Engel has been accused of stereotyping Latinos. And in a much-viewed video, she told Hispanic students some of them looked Asian.
Some of you look a little more Asian to me.
In California's governor's race, immigration became an issue when Meg Whitman's undocumented housekeeper went public about being fired after working 9 years for Whitman.
She said, "I cannot help you."
Whitman has spent about $140 million, a record for a non-presidential campaign. Among non-Latino voters, she's in a dead heat with Jerry Brown at 48% each. But add in Latinos, and Brown has a 5-point edge, 49% to 44%. While Latino voters potentially have significant influence, it will count only if they actually cast ballots. A poll by the Pew Hispanic Center shows that only 51% of registered Latinos say they are certain they will vote in this election. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News.
It gets better.
It does get better.
Words to live by for gay teens targeted by bullies. But up next, 6 months later, most of the oil is gone, but it's far too soon to declare the BP disaster over. 6 months ago tonight, the Deepwater Horizon blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and causing the worst oil spill in U.S. history. 207 million gallons of oil leaked. BP has already paid about $3 billion in claims and is on the hook for at least $17 billion more. And even if the well is now plugged, Mark Strassman reports the crisis is far from over.
6 months later, cleanup crews were still sucking up oil today in Bay Jimmy, Louisiana. Proof the BP spill is still news to Ron Price, a charter fishing boat captain here.
My big worry is, when they do leave and we're sitting here with no customers coming in, where's my next check coming from?
Back in April, no one could have predicted an oil spill 19 times worse than the Exxon Valdez. But by June 2nd,
all this oil, this is so heavy I can barely lift it, is part of a 16-mile slick that currents out here in the Gulf are now pushing to land.
To date, more than 154 million gallons have been burned, skimmed, captured, or dispersed on their own, about 75% of the total spill.
The entire Gulf of Mexico was a hot spot. So now we're dealing with what I call hot spots, where we have heavy oil, moderate oil, and light oil.
Pockets like Gulf Shores, Alabama. The mayor's given BP until February to clean up the beaches. But to whose satisfaction?
We're not capable of deciding that, and really neither is BP.
Conflicting standards. It's the issue with this continuing cleanup, and 6 months later with this region's economic recovery. Who deserves BP compensation and how much?
Still shut down, new deepwater oil and gas exploration. More than 16,000 square miles of federal fishing waters. And Gulf seafood has a lingering stigma.
Shrimp is hard to move right now. The price ain't that good.
Back in May, Ron Price predicted this spill would be his doomsday.
This is like someone slicing your throat.
Today, he admits doomsday was an exaggeration.
6 months later, it's just so different than I think we all forecasted.
Here in the Gulf, the spill's economic and environmental impact is still unfolding.
We've taken a serious hit. We will not know for a few years exactly how deep or how long that damage will run.
On most of this coast, the oil's gone, but not the stain. Mark Strassman, CBS News, New Orleans.
And when we come back, how to handle an angry chimp. There's a potential safety problem with a lot of baby strollers. Graco is recalling 2 million of its Quattro and Metro Light strollers sold between 2000 and 2007. Children can get stuck between the tray and the seat and choke. 4 deaths and 5 injuries have been reported. When you're a police officer, you never know what the day will bring, a robbery or a car accident. Or how about a chimpanzee on the loose? In Kansas City, Missouri, a 300-pound chimp attacked a police car and bashed the windshield. Police tried for an hour to capture the chimp before the owner finally coaxed it into a cage. That owner was fined for having a dangerous animal within city limits. Now, the tale of the tape. Guinness has named this house cat in Reno, Nevada, the world's longest, more than 4 feet from nose to tailbone. The 5-year-old is a Maine Coon, the gentle giants of the cat world. And still ahead, saving lives with a simple promise. It gets better. It's been a problem for as long as kids have been going to school. Bullying. 1 in 6 students admits to being bullied 2 to 3 times a month or more. Some are targeted because they are gay. Who will stand up for them? As Michelle Miller reports, a whole lot of people.
13-year-olds, 12-year-olds out there watching this video, what I'd love you to take away from it really is that it gets better.
It was September 21st when Dan Savage says he'd had enough. He was sick of hearing stories of bullied gay teens taking their own lives.
Because I just wish I could have talked to that kid for 5 minutes and been able to tell him it gets better before he commits suicide.
So the gay advice columnist spoke out on this video and posted it online.
Your life can be amazing.
1 month later,
and I can tell you that it gets better.
There are thousands of them, all part of his It Gets Better project.
In the era of YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, I could make a video, encourage other adult gays and lesbians to do the same.
And they have. In addition to gays and lesbians offering support,
not every place is as bigoted as the place that you live in.
Everyone from employees of Google.
That was the
token computer nerd, so I got picked on all the time.
To celebrities.
I'm very happy today.
To the Secretary of State.
And it will get better for you.
Has signed on.
Everyone who's taken part has sort of volunteered to get in there and be the shoulder to cry on.
I've never told this story to anyone.
And one Fort Worth City Councilman's emotional It Gets Better speech already has 2 million views.
And you will have a lifetime of happy memories.
So far, there have been more than 10 million hits.
Our call volume has skyrocketed.
And now that the website is linked to California's suicide prevention helpline, the Trevor Project, calls have nearly tripled. The counseling center averaged about 400 calls a week. Now they're getting 1,000. Their hope is that the message of hope spreads.
Yes, we want all people to feel safe, to feel secure with who they are, to not feel afraid.
A simple message.
I promise it gets so much better.
Empowering words for those who need to hear them and those who choose to say them.
Everything's going to be okay.
Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.